Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we have 10 bold predictions for San Francisco 49ers training camp that starts today at 11 a.m. when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talk to the media, kicking off essentially the 2024 NFL season for the Niners. It's a massive year for them. It's Super Bowl or bust. So many things have to go right, and you're hoping many things do not go wrong. But I have 10 bold predictions, including trades, signings, players getting cut, players performing well. Before we dive into everything, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You can follow us on social media, and you can use our promo code 49ersaccess at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase if you want to go see your San Francisco 49ers. And without further ado, let's start with number one out of my 10 training camp bold takes. It's the easiest one to say. I wouldn't even say it's that bold, but 10's a better number than 9. There will be no quarterback controversy in 2024, but not just that Brock Purdy has the job in the bag, but it's that Brock Purdy is going to look bigger and faster and stronger, entering technically only his second full season as a starter. If you know who Brett Coleman is, he said during his podcast, the Bootleg Podcast, that Brock Purdy wasn't done rehabbing until late November around Thanksgiving time when they beat the Seattle Seahawks on Thanksgiving and ate turkey this past year in Seattle. And then you saw him take off past that. Now you give Brock Purdy a full off-season program, coming in completely healthy. You've seen the photos that even when they aren't edited, Brock Purdy looks bigger. I think we're going to hear a lot of great things, which we already do, mind you, but I think we're going to hear even greater things from Brock's physical body, the specimen that he is, which Brock Purdy's not a big guy. He's shifty, he's quick, but I think we're going to see a new and improved Brock Purdy, at least physically, the body-wise, coming into 2024. My second bold take of San Francisco 49ers training camp is that offensive lineman John Feliciano is going to be named the starting center headed into the first week of the NFL season against the New York Jets. Because of Jake Brendel's lingering knee injury, he has knee arthritis, and while I'm hoping this is not the case, obviously you want to be at full strength. We all know that when you're an older player like Jake Brendel is, he has some gray in the beard if you'd seen him in person, and when you have knee arthritis when you're older, usually that's when things start to linger. I am someone that I tore my meniscus almost a decade ago, right? And there are days where the knee still bothers me, and that's been surgically repaired. I go to the gym all the time. Like, knees are tricky. And when you're an NFL athlete, as soon as you start to wear down, you add the arthritis and tendonitis. And we saw Eric Armstead, albeit different injuries, he had plantar fasciitis. That thing lingered forever. It impacted how he played and how long he could play now with the Jacksonville Jaguars, already on the PUP list. Going back to Jake Brendel, well, I hope he's healthy. I think eventually he will start at center for the San Francisco 49ers again this year. I have a weird, sneaky feeling that come week one, the starting offensive line will be Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, John Feliciano, with Ben Barch as the backup center, and Spencer Burford is going to be forced back into the starting lineup at right guard next to Colton McKivitz. I do not believe Dominic Puni wins a starting job out of camp, but I could see Puni winning the right guard job if Feliciano isn't starting at center. But I do believe Jake Brendel's injury, while yes, it's only arthritis, I think that thing can linger for a little bit, and I think it could cause some issues early on during training camp when it's hot outside. He's kind of getting himself back into shape for football, having not taken part of OTAs or mini camps. So, while it's not a big deal, I do think it's something to keep an eye on, and I do believe that John Feliciano will be named the starting center week 1 of the NFL season, which brings us to the defensive side of the football. I believe 7th round rookie linebacker out of Florida State, Tatum Bethune, will become the 4th linebacker on the depth chart, jumping Demetrius Flanagan-Falls, Jalen Graham, Ezekiel Turner, and Curtis Robinson. I firmly believe that when you look at Fred Warner, he'll start obviously. Devondre Campbell is penciled in to start while Dre Greenlaw rehabs. Then you have a player like D. Winters, who I think the hope would be he outperforms players like Robinson, Turner, Graham, and Falls. But that's where I see Tatum Bethune pushing him up the depth chart while Greenlaw rehabs. You walk into 2024 with essentially 4 linebackers that you're comfortable playing a lot at least. You have Fred Warner. He's all pro Fred. We love him so much, right? You had Devondre Campbell, the stopgap when Dre Greenlaw or whenever he comes back. Then you have young players that you hope become something. Your D. Winters, who I think everybody points to, including myself, him kind of being a diamond in the rough of last year's draft class, didn't get a lot of time to play. I think Tatum Bethune is someone that, and we've talked about this during his scouting report, he's kind of an even-keeled guy. At worst, he's a special teamer. And I think for Bethune, the reason why I like him so much is because while the ceiling is not very high, the floor is not low. He's kind of a middle-tier linebacker who can be your 4th, 5th guy on the depth chart. And I think in year 1 for Bethune, I see him pushing players like Falls and Graham and Turner and Robinson and some of those guys even off the roster as a rookie out of Florida State. And you heard me right there. That means D. Winters becomes the de facto 3rd linebacker walking into this year with Dre Greenlaw on the shelf. I am someone that does not believe Dre Greenlaw is going to play until middle of the year. Time will obviously tell. He tore his ACL, or tore his Achilles, in the Super Bowl. Those things take time. It's been, 5 months? I don't think he's going to play until October, November, maybe even later in the year in December. This thing is going to take a lot of time for him to come back. And I think San Francisco is going to have to rely on the young linebackers they have in that room, mainly D. Winters and Tatum Bethune. But let's dive into the trenches a little bit for my 4th bold prediction of Niners training camp. I believe Kalia Davis is going to get cut. The injuries have piled up, and I get it when he's healthy. Despite being a late round pick, the hope was he could be kind of a DJ Jones type player, a wrecking ball, right? Go in there, take on 2 guys, give people like Nick Bosa and now Leonard Floyd and Javon Hargrave time to get to the quarterback, allow your pass rushers to go get the quarterback and be a run-stuffing defensive tackle as well. But Kalia Davis can't stay healthy. Now, in that same breath, San Francisco doesn't have, in regards to numbers, a very deep defensive line. Hence why they are going to cut Kalia Davis, whether it's due to injury or just not being able to stack up with the rest of the group. And they're going to bring back Hassan Ridgeway, who was here a handful of years ago, who was in Houston last year with DeMeco Ryans. Ridgeway, only 29. He raises the floor of the group as a whole, and you cannot cut Kalia Davis and not sign another defensive tackle. Go get a vet, bring him in that room, raise the floor of that group. And honestly, if you walked into 2024 with Hargrave, Jordan Elliott, Malik Collins, Hassan Ridgeway, those are 4 solid defensive tackles, obviously some better than others. But you're not too concerned knowing you have a Yetur Gross-Matos that can play inside and outside. And obviously along the way, you'll find other pieces involved that can help you on the interior defensive line. But I do think Kalia Davis, he hasn't done much, and I think his time's kind of up in San Francisco if he does not figure it out. Hence why I think he's going to get cut this season. My 5th bold take is one Niner fans are going to hate. Because while I'm not saying this player is going to lose their job, in fact, I think he'll keep his job. I will just say this. I believe Jake Moody's kicking inconsistencies will lead to San Francisco bringing in another kicker into camp. We saw it last year with Zane Gonzalez. Obviously, we saw how that played itself out. Zane didn't do much. Moody won the job. And overall, having been there at camp, Moody was much better between the two of those kickers. That said, we also saw Jake Moody miss a lot of field goals in, clutch places. The Super Bowl, there were a handful of games in the middle of the year where you were like, oh my God, even week 18 against the Rams, he misses a kick as well. And you're just like, we need to figure this thing out. And he was supposed to be the answer. It was supposed to be let Robbie Gould go, bring in Jake Moody. He was the perfect prospect according to special teams coordinator Brian Schneider. Saying perfect at this point in time, I think is a wild thing to say, but you can see there's something there. You can see the leg strength. You understand why the San Francisco took him in the third round, but when you look back at last year, Jake Moody already has somewhat of a target on his back by Niner fans, and I think we are going to see a little bit more of those inconsistencies in camp. God, I hope not. If there are those, we are having a much bigger conversation of not only did San Francisco mess up in the third round, it's like, do they need to go buy another kicker? And at that point, it's usually way too late. All the good ones are usually taken up. So I'm hoping it's not true, but my fifth bold take is that Jake Moody's kicking inconsistencies continue into 2024. But with sadness, with negativity, on the other side, the yin to the yang, you have positivity. And my sixth bold prediction of Niners training camp in 2024 is the Niners sign a veteran safety, whether it be a Micah Hyde, whether it be a Quandre Diggs, even if it is a Justin Simmons, or maybe even bringing back Tashaun Gibson. When you look at San Francisco's safety room currently, right now it's Jair Brown, who we can all assume is going to start come day one, ended the year playing really good, picked off Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and overall played a really good free safety for the Niners, albeit they really don't play positional safety groups strong or free safety. Then you get to who's starting next to him. The hope would be it's Talanoa Hufanga. I am someone that leans or is cautious with Talanoa Hufanga's recovery. I like Hufanga. He's a great player. I think when you look at what San Francisco can do with Brown, Hufanga, Malik Mustafa, I think you look at a really dynamic kind of three-man trio group where you're like, holy crap, it's boys to men back there. They are harmonizing left and right. Like, man, this thing is working out. But my concern is that if Hufanga's injury lingers, if the recovery process takes longer than expected, you now find yourself in a position where you have Jair Brown, an unproven Malik Mustafa, then you have Taylor Hawkins, then you have George Odom. And despite me liking a lot of those players, would you feel comfortable walking into week one against the Jets, a likely recovered 100% Aaron Rodgers and Breece Hall and that receiver group, with Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa? Maybe you would. And maybe Mustafa walks into week one and we're like, Tashaun Gibson who? Justin Simmons who? Hufanga who? And I think that's kind of the hope that Mustafa steps up. But, and despite me having a lot of hype, a lot of praise towards Malik Mustafa's college career, we have no idea what these guys are going to be. Time will obviously tell what Mustafa becomes. I think the plan is for him to kind of supplant Hufanga as a starter so they don't have to pay Hufanga after the year. But that said, you want to win now. Can you wait 6 weeks for Gibson to come back? Maybe you can if Mustafa's playing well or Hufanga's injury isn't, the recovery is going good enough, but isn't perfect. I think that San Francisco would benefit from signing one of those four players. Obviously, you want the best one being Justin Simmons. Then you have guys that are vets. Quandre Diggs knows the system, playing with Seattle, with Nick Sorensen. Deshaun Gibson was here the last 2 years and played really well. He's a vet in the room. He can help teach guys like Jair Brown still, mentor players like Malik Mustafa. Then you have somebody like Micah Hyde, who, despite saying he wants to go back to Buffalo and maybe his best years are behind him, maybe you only need a guy for 2 or 3 weeks, for a month, then Hufanga's back completely healthy. I think San Francisco would benefit from signing one of those four players. And I think that walking into camp, you can say, wow, Hufanga and Brown and Mustafa, but the reality truly is we have no idea what two of those guys are going to be. And in all honesty, maybe even three of those guys. Despite Brown having a great end to last year, what is year two going to be? I believe he'll have a great year two in the NFL. I think he showed what he could be last year towards the end of the year. I think he'll pick things back up where he left off, but with the uncertainty of Hufanga's knee injury and not truly knowing what Mustafa's transition into the NFL is going to be, I would lean towards signing a veteran free agent safety to kind of aid that group, lift that floor, even be kind of a spot starter or a month-long starter, because George Odom is a special teams player, basically only. Taylor Hawkins is a backup player over the course of his career. And then you get into, again, the question marks of Hufanga's injury and Mustafa's NFL career. What is that going to be like? So I think signing one of those four players is kind of no harm, no foul. Obviously, they're in different tiers, but I think San Francisco signs at least one of them to aid that safety group. Moving to the offense, though, I believe Deebo Samuel is going to show up to training camp in the best shape of his career and is going to be poised for another Pro Bowl season in what is now considered a contract year. Now, what I mean by that is that Deebo Samuel himself has stated he's really not been proud of the last 2 seasons before his 2023 campaign. Ever since he got paid, he called his production trash. He said he never wanted to put what he did in 2022 on tape ever again. He had a really good 2023. Obviously, injuries played a big role in what he could and couldn't do in the playoffs and throughout part of the middle of the year. That said, if you watch the Instagrams, you watch the TikToks, Deebo Samuel looks like he's in the best shape of his career. Now, that's a cliche. I get it. You're going to hear that from a handful of people. Of this guy and that guy. You're going to hear from the third string offensive lineman, Brandon Parker, who's 29 years old and shouldn't ever start in the NFL ever again. Oh, he's in the best shape of his career. Great, cool. When Deebo Samuel comes into camp in shape tomorrow or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever we see him for the first time as media and as fans, we're all going to say, oh, he's ready. He's ready. And the way San Francisco has, I don't want to say worked themselves into a corner, the way they've handled the receiver contract negotiations, the receiver trade talks with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, whether you like it or not, Deebo Samuel is essentially playing for his job this year. Brandon Ayuk is essentially playing for his job this year unless he gets paid, because there is a real possibility that Deebo Samuel walks into the final year of his contract or walks into the penultimate year of his contract while Ayuk gets a big bag of money and he's like, well, what do I do? Am I here? Am I there? Am I gone? We already heard Deebo say during OTA's minicamp that, yeah, we had real talks about being traded. Now, nothing happened, obviously, but he knows that his time in San Francisco could be numbered. And so this year for him is a kind of a do you want to get paid again kind of year, because he can get cut, he can get traded. I think San Francisco, while deviously, they also almost ingeniously worked this a way where if Ayuk's on the 5th-year option and Deebo Samuel's kind of sitting there like, okay, well, am I getting paid or is he getting paid or am I going to be here or is Ayuk going to still be here? You have two receivers kind of fighting and jockeying to be the best. And that can backfire for sure, but I think ultimately what San Francisco has done, albeit it might not be smart, they have backed both their star receivers into corners and said, prove to me who's the best. Go out there and show me. I think that's going to be Deebo Samuel. You go back to his stats last year. Deebo almost had like 13 touchdowns. And it felt like it was kind of glossed over of like, oh my God. When Deebo was healthy, game changer. And I think this year, over the course of 18 weeks and 17 games and hopefully a long playoff run, I think we are going to see I don't want to say a transform, but Deebo Samuel this year is going to harken back to 2021 a little more than he did the past couple seasons. Going back to defense, for my 8th bold prediction of Niners training camp in 2024, we are going to hear reports of Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd looking like the best edge rushing tandem under Kyle Shanahan. We've known that ever since Dee Ford's injuries caught up to him, the Niners have been looking for an edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa. They tried to mix it up with Arden Key and Samson Ebukam. They had a lot of success with Charles Omenihu playing inside and outside. Last year it was Randy Gregory, and early in the season it was Drake Jackson, and late in the season it was Chase Young, and none of that really worked. Yes, there was, they went to the frickin' Super Bowl, but nothing truly ever fired on all cylinders. Nothing worked perfectly, fluidly. And I think San Francisco this year is kind of looking for a guy that can play every single game for them, opposite Nick Bosa, give them 10 sacks, opposite Nick Bosa. I think we're going to hear that Leonard Floyd looks like the best edge rusher under Kyle Shanahan and is going to be the best edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa since Dee Ford. And I think we're going to hear a lot of reports. We're talking, if no one gets hurt, obviously, we're going to hear people talking about, oh my God, San Francisco's defensive line looks amazing. Oh, they're revamped, they're hyped, they're healthy. This might be the best group they've ever had. It might not be the deepest, but it might be the best when it comes to top tier talent. They're top heavy, but man, they're really good. I think we're going to see a lot of those reports this training camp. Moving on, staying on the defensive side for the last two, though. You're not going to like this because this man gets a lot of hate for what he did with the Chargers, and rightfully so. But I believe Brandon Staley's revamped secondary, knowing that he's going to be working with the nickelbacks and the cornerbacks, I think Brandon Staley's revamped secondary is going to propel rookie Renardo Green and Darrell Luter Jr. to the 4th and 5th spots on the cornerback depth chart. I believe the starters are kind of already penciled in. You have Travarius Mooney-Ward, obviously going to start. Ademo Lenore, been one of the most underrated players in football the past 2 years, and I think Isaac Yiadom is going to be the outside cornerback opposite Mooney-Ward, and they're going to keep Lenore playing nickelback to begin the season. But a lot of people are jockeying for the 4th and 5th spots on the depth chart. You have Rock Ya-Sin, Ambry Thomas, Renardo Green, Darrell Luter Jr., Samuel Womack, and plenty more. Chase Lucas. A lot of guys. One of the more underrated conversations, camp battles no one's talking about is who's going to be in that cornerback group this year. I do not believe in Rock Ya-Sin. I don't really believe in Samuel Womack outside of being a special teamer or a gunner. And Chase Lucas, kind of the same as Samuel Womack, which brings us to Renardo Green, Darrell Luter Jr., and Ambry Thomas. I think with Brandon Staley now in the room, we are going to see younger players like Renardo Green and Darrell Luter Jr. grow quickly. Now, it's not to say Staley's some cornerback guru, but the way they played with the Chargers and the way they're going to want to play in San Francisco is you have to be able to tackle, which Green can do tremendously well. And with Staley, with the star packages he likes to use, I think Green he has versatility that Thomas doesn't. He can play nickel. He can play outside. And there may be even an outside chance Green sneaks in to play that third safety role at times if San Francisco feels comfortable enough with him. Then there's Darrell Luter Jr., who last year San Francisco seemed to like a lot. I think if he actually practiced throughout the offseason and throughout training camp, he actually would have had a shot to start over Ambry Thomas, but Thomas was there and he was a body and he was available. Because you look at last year on Christmas Day, San Francisco signed Jason Verrett off the street, then gave him valuable reps against the Ravens. San Francisco is not tied to Ambry Thomas in any way. He's too inconsistent. Now, he wasn't the reason they lost many games last year, but when you have younger players like Luter Jr., a bigger-bodied outside cornerback, and Renardo Green that can play inside and outside, and you add in Brandon Staley's more aggressive style of defensive back with the star position they have, which Derwin James played with LA, I think Staley is going to bring something to the table. Because last year, I kept preaching that Steve Wilks is going to be so good for Ambry Thomas, and he was. Ambry Thomas played almost every single game last year and played relatively well at times. Like, I know he was inconsistent against the Packers and sometimes played too scared, and rightfully, if you have that opinion, you're right. But Ambry Thomas played really well at times last year too, but he's too inconsistent. I think this year, young players like Green and Luter Jr. are going to be given every chance to jump Thomas on the depth chart, and that brings us to our 10th and final bold prediction of San Francisco 49ers training camp in 2024. Because players like Renardo Green and Darrell Luter Jr. jump Ambry Thomas on the depth chart, that makes a player like Ambry Thomas expendable. That makes a player like Ambry Thomas maybe on the trade block. And this is my final bold prediction. You walk into 2024 with your cornerback room, Mooney Ward, Lenore, Tatum, Renardo Green, Darrell Luter Jr., and a mixture of Chase Lucas or Samuel Womack as your sixth guy. That makes Ambry Thomas expendable, and I truly believe the Niners are going to trade Ambry Thomas for a 4th or 5th round pick. Those are my 2024 bold predictions. What do you think about them down below? Should I have gone bolder? Should I have said they're going to trade for, I don't know, insert random player? What are your bold predictions for Niners training camp? It kicks off today, 11 a.m., when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talk to the media. And I can feel it now, folks. We're gearing up for a brand new season of San Francisco 49er football. I know it ended so poorly last year in the very last game of the season, but let's pick ourselves back up collectively. We are the faithful for a reason, and let's push as hard as we ever have to hopefully hoist a Lombardi trophy in 2024. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit subscribe, follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter, at 49ers Access is the Instagram. Use our promo code 49ers Access at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And as always, until next time, stay faithful.